She was just another janitor in a suit of silence. No one cared to look twice until that morning. While the rest of the office rushed past her, she stood in the lobby, speaking Mandarin like it was her first language. Then Spanish, then French. 9 languages each, flowing from her lips like a hidden treasure just waiting to be discovered. But this wasn't just a random coincidence. This was the moment that would change everything. The moment when the CEO, who had never noticed her, finally stopped because what he heard shook him to his core. What happens next? The whole company would never be the same. Stay tuned. If you think you've seen it all, think again. A janitor turned CEO's right hand, a story of hidden talent and unstoppable ambition. Hit that follow button now because you won't believe what happens next. This is more than a job, this is a revolution in the making. Don't miss the moment when everything changes. Inside the sleek, polished walls of Global Tech Solutions, there was one area no one bothered to look at: the cleaning crew. Every night they came in, pushed their carts, changed trash bags, wiped down tables, and blended into the background. Invisible, unnoticed. Olivia was one of them, a janitor with a face most of the staff wouldn't even recognize if they passed her in the hall. Her job was simple: clean. That was it. But what they didn't know, what no one had bothered to ask, was that Olivia was more than just a pair of hands with a mop. While the executives argued over quarterly reports while the sales team hammered out deals that would keep the company running, Olivia had a secret: she spoke 9 languages fluently. And not just a little bit, she spoke them like a native: Mandarin, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Arabic. The list went on. No one ever cared. No one ever asked. She had been overlooked her entire life, graduated with honors, but never given the chance. Her degree, her skills were never enough. She'd always been pushed aside, forced to take whatever job she could find to make ends meet. But this wasn't just about speaking different languages. This was about the years of hard work, the late-night self-study, the textbooks she borrowed, and the moments she spent listening to language tapes while mopping floors. It was a silent rebellion. And soon, the world was going to notice. Enter Jonathan Mallory, the CEO. He had passed her dozens of times, never once thinking twice about the woman who silently scrubbed floors while the business world rushed by in a blur. But this time, on a Monday morning like any other, as he walked across the lobby, he heard it. Mandarin, clear, sharp, fluent. And it wasn't coming from a high-ranking executive or even one of the company's international consultants. It was Olivia, the janitor. He stopped dead in his tracks. The conversation wasn't just in Mandarin. It was smooth, effortless, like it was the most natural thing in the world. As he took a step closer, the woman who had always blended into the background was suddenly speaking in Spanish to a delivery man, then French to a confused vendor. A thought struck him hard, something he had never considered before. How could he, a man who had spent years building international connections, hiring translators, and negotiating across borders, have missed someone like her? It didn't make sense. A janitor fluent in 9 languages, just standing there, unnoticed. What happened next would shake him and the entire company forever. Olivia had no idea that the CEO of Global Tech was now watching her. To her, the day was like any other. She kept to her routine, mopping the floors, cleaning the windows, and trying to ignore the noise of the office buzzing around her. It was a place she was used to being invisible, used to people walking past without a glance. But today, the world was about to change. Jonathan Mallory couldn't stop thinking about her. The image of Olivia speaking those languages with ease had burned into his mind. He had spent years leading a company that prided itself on global outreach. He'd hired interpreters, negotiated with foreign investors, and led international meetings, all while pretending the people who did the real work, people like Olivia, were invisible. How could he have been so blind? How could he have missed a talent like hers so close to him, right under his nose? For the next few days, Jonathan found himself looking for her, tracking her movements through the halls. She was always there, quiet, unobtrusive, just another face among many. But now he couldn't help but wonder, what else had he missed? What other hidden talents were walking through his office every day, unnoticed, underestimated? He finally couldn't take it anymore. One morning he approached her directly. Olivia froze when she saw him. Never in her wildest dreams did she think the CEO would even acknowledge her existence. But there he was, standing in front of her, a faint smile on his face, his eyes narrowing slightly as if he was trying to piece together a puzzle. "Excuse me, Olivia, right?" he asked. She nodded, unsure of what was coming. "Yes, sir. You speak Mandarin, right?" he asked, as if testing her, almost skeptical that this janitor could possess such skill. "Yes, sir." "And Spanish, French?" His voice was soft but intense, as if trying to confirm the impossible. "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice steady, no pride, no hesitation. Just the truth. Jonathan Mallory couldn't believe what he was hearing. 9 languages, fluid as natural as any high-level executive he'd ever met. This woman, this janitor, was more qualified than some of his top employees, and yet she had been scrubbing floors, invisible, underestimated all this time. He tried to catch his breath, but it felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted. "Olivia?" He began, trying to stay composed. "What else can you do?" She looked at him for a moment, as if weighing her words. "I clean the building," she said simply. It stung. The contrast. The reality that someone so talented, so intelligent, had been relegated to this job for so long. But he couldn't let it go. He needed to know more. "Why are you working here?" She sighed, and for the first time Olivia allowed herself to be vulnerable. "I came here to take care of my family. My mother was sick and my dad passed away. I had to leave school to take care of them. I've been doing whatever I can just to survive." Jonathan Mallory paused. He had heard this story before, the story of people who had so much potential but were crushed by circumstances beyond their control. But this wasn't just anyone. This was Olivia, the woman who could speak languages he only wished he could master, the woman who had been wasting away in a job that didn't even come close to matching her abilities. He had to do something. He couldn't just walk away from this, from her, from the opportunity. He had to change everything. "Olivia," he said, his voice firm now, "I want to offer you a chance, a real chance, a position in our international department. We need someone like you, someone who can communicate with our global partners and truly understand the cultures we're working with." Olivia's eyes widened. She took a step back, unsure of whether she had heard him correctly. I don't know. I've never had a job like that. I don't have a degree. I've never even worked in an office before." Jonathan smiled faintly. "You've worked harder than anyone I know. That's the kind of person we need. I'll make sure you get the training. You'll be paid well, and you'll finally get the recognition you deserve." For the first time, Olivia felt a glimmer of hope. It was the opportunity she had always dreamed of, but she hesitated. She wasn't used to being offered things like this. She had worked her whole life for scraps. Could she trust this? Could she really make this leap? But there was something in Jonathan's eyes, something in the way he spoke that made her think, maybe this could be her chance to prove everyone wrong. But the next step wasn't as easy as it seemed. As soon as the news of her promotion spread, the whispers began. "She's just a janitor. How can she be qualified for that job? She doesn't even have a degree. Why her, and not someone who's been working here longer?" Even the HR department had doubts, questioning whether Olivia could actually perform at the level required for such a prestigious position. It was as if the higher-ups in the company were more concerned about their own pride and position than giving someone who truly deserved it a chance. They had spent years ignoring the potential right in front of them, and now they were struggling to accept it. And so began the fight. Olivia wasn't just fighting for a promotion. She was fighting for respect, fighting against a system that had consistently overlooked her, and she was ready to prove them all wrong. Olivia sat at her desk, the silence in the office almost suffocating. The buzz of the phones, the shuffle of papers, the clacking of keyboards, none of it mattered. She could feel the eyes of her colleagues on her, whispering, questioning how she had gotten here. No degree, no office experience, just a janitor. But they didn't know the half of it. She had been handed a seat at the table, yes, but that seat came with a catch doubt. The office wasn't ready to accept someone like her. They still saw her as the woman who cleaned their mess, not as the one who would fix it. Olivia knew what they thought of her. They thought she was a fluke, that she didn't deserve to be here. But what they didn't know was that the years she spent cleaning floors weren't just a waste of time, they were the training ground for the skills she needed to crush them all. She had learned patience, resilience, and the power of silence. They had underestimated her, and she wasn't about to let them forget it. That night, as she sat alone in her new office staring at the spreadsheets of the company's latest international deals, the plan began to take shape. Olivia wasn't just going to prove her worth, she was going to flip the script. She started by studying the contracts that no one else cared about, the small print, the loopholes, the language that was supposed to be clear but was deliberately vague. She found errors, big ones. She saw gaps in the translation terms that had been misinterpreted, details that had slipped through the cracks. All of it right in front of her face, and no one had noticed. Olivia's eyes narrowed as she scribbled notes. This wasn't just about speaking languages. This was about understanding the culture, the strategy, the politics hidden behind those documents. She had been cleaning up after them for years, but now it was her turn to clean up their mess. She wasn't going to play by their rules. She would rewrite them. The next day, she went straight to Jonathan Mallory's office. She didn't knock. She didn't wait for permission. She walked right in, folder in hand. Jonathan looked up, startled by the interruption. She didn't care. "Mr. Mallory, I've found something," Olivia said, her voice steady, almost cold. "Something you need to see." Jonathan's expression shifted from curiosity to concern as he watched her slide the folder across his desk. He opened it, scanning the documents. His eyes widened. She had found contractual errors that would cost the company millions if not corrected. Huge mistakes that had been overlooked by the highest-paid consultants and legal teams. He began, but trailed off, unable to find the words. Olivia didn't need to say more. Her eyes spoke for her. This was her moment. She had been playing the long game, biding her time, and now she was in control. "Tell me, Jonathan, who else knows about these?" Olivia asked, her tone casual but sharp, like a knife sliding through butter. He glanced at the papers again, his fingers trembling slightly. "No one. Just the legal team." "But this, how did you—" "Don't worry," Olivia cut in smoothly. "I've got this under control." She stood up, looking down at Jonathan as he sat frozen, his mind racing. He realized all at once that the woman he had dismissed as just a janitor was more powerful than he could have ever imagined. And then, with the flick of a finger, she made it clear. She wasn't asking for a handout. She wasn't asking for permission. She was showing them what happens when you underestimate someone. Jonathan stared at the papers in front of him. His mind was still processing, still trying to understand the shift in power that had just occurred. Olivia didn't wait for his response. She turned, ready to leave, her footsteps echoing through the hallway. But before she reached the door, she paused and turned back, eyes locking with his. "I'm not just here to clean up the mess, Jonathan," she said softly. "I'm here to change the game." And with that, Olivia walked out of his office, leaving him stunned, his entire perception of her shattered. She had made her move, and now there was no going back. What followed was a series of carefully calculated steps. Olivia began using the errors she found to her advantage, fixing problems the company had been too blind to see. But each time she fixed something, they took notice. Slowly, the whispers in the office changed. They weren't talking about her in hushed tones anymore. They were asking for her help. One by one, people began to see what Jonathan had failed to, that Olivia wasn't just a janitor. She was a force, a woman who had spent years quietly observing, learning, and now executing. They had underestimated her once, but they wouldn't make the same mistake again. This was her plan, not just to prove her worth, but to take control of her future in a way that would leave them all speechless. And it wasn't just about climbing the corporate ladder, it was about reshaping the very system that had kept her in the shadows for so long. As the days went on, the tension built. The whispers grew louder. Olivia was more than just a survivor, she was becoming a leader who would change not just her own life, but the lives of everyone around her. Olivia knew the path ahead wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't enough to simply fix the mistakes in the contracts. No, she had to take things to the next level. She had to show them that she was more than just an employee in the company. She had to make them believe she was the only one who could save them. Over the next few weeks, Olivia meticulously worked through every detail. She didn't just go after the obvious issues, she dove into the company's overseas operations, dug through old emails, reviewed old negotiations. There was one major project that everyone had overlooked, a multi-million-dollar deal with an international client that had been dragging on for months. The project was about to collapse, and the blame would fall squarely on the shoulders of the international team. But Olivia knew something no one else did. The deal was savable. All it needed was someone who understood the cultural nuances, the language, the human element. And that someone was her. She walked into the meeting room where the team was gathered, and for the first time, everyone noticed her. The table was filled with high-level executives, all of them too busy with their own egos to care about the real work. She stood at the back waiting for her moment. Her boss, Victor, noticed her first. He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "Olivia, what are you doing here?" he asked, the condescension dripping from his tone. He was still holding on to his belief that she didn't belong in these rooms. "You're not needed here." Olivia didn't flinch. She didn't need to. She had learned long ago that the quietest person often had the loudest impact. "I think you need me here," she said, calmly, stepping forward. Victor scoffed. "This isn't your area of expertise." But Olivia was already laying out the facts, flipping through her notes. She had done her homework, and what she was about to reveal wasn't just a guess, it was cold, hard evidence. She pointed to the problems in the contract, showed how the translation had been done poorly, how key cultural considerations had been ignored. She calmly outlined how the entire deal could be saved with a few simple adjustments. The room was dead silent. Olivia's gaze shifted from one face to another, all of them stunned. These were people who had made deals worth billions. Yet here was Olivia, a janitor turned executive, fixing their mistakes without breaking a sweat. Victor was seething, but he couldn't argue. He had no choice but to let her proceed. The client was hesitant, but Olivia knew how to speak their language, literally and figuratively. She called the client herself, working through the cultural issues, negotiating terms with the kind of skill the executives in the room had never bothered to understand. Within hours, the deal was back on track. Not only had Olivia saved the deal, but she had secured a higher payout for the company, something no one had even thought possible. And she did it with grace, precision, and intelligence, the exact traits they had always overlooked. When the meeting ended, Victor looked at her with a mixture of begrudging respect and irritation. He knew she had just outperformed the entire team, and he hated it. But the look in his eyes said everything. He was forced to acknowledge her. As Olivia left the room, her phone buzzed. It was Jonathan Mallory, the CEO. He had been watching the whole thing. "You did it," Jonathan said over the phone. "The deal is back on track. You saved us." For the first time in years, Olivia felt something she hadn't felt before: validation. But she wasn't done yet. The next day, Jonathan called her into his office. This time, the tone was different. There was no skepticism in his eyes, just admiration. He looked at her, the woman who had cleaned their bathrooms for years, and said, "Olivia, we need you on the leadership team. You've proved that you're not just capable, you're essential." The words hit her like a shockwave. She had spent so long being invisible, never asking for recognition, always working in the background. Now, everything had changed. But Olivia wasn't about to be just another name on the leadership board. She wasn't going to settle for the position they were offering her. She wasn't going to just fill a seat, she was going to reshape the entire company. That afternoon, Olivia sat down with Jonathan Mallory and presented her plan. She didn't just want to be a part of the international team. She wanted to lead it. She wanted to take the company's diversity and inclusion efforts to a global scale, something they had never even considered. She wanted to break down the walls between departments, connect teams that had been siloed for years, and build a company that truly reflected the world it operated in. Jonathan listened, his eyes wide with amazement. He had thought she was just someone who had slipped through the cracks, someone who could be easily dismissed. But Olivia had just proven that she was more than that. She was the future of global tech. "Done," Jonathan said. "It's yours." And just like that, Olivia's journey from invisible janitor to global leader was complete. She had rewritten the rules, not with force, but with quiet, intelligent strategy and patience. The company would never be the same, and neither would Olivia. Within days, the entire office was buzzing with one name, Olivia. Whispers filled the hallways, but this time they weren't the usual dismissive murmurs. No, these whispers were filled with shock, respect, and fear. The woman who had once cleaned their bathrooms, scrubbed their floors, was now the leader they had never seen coming. But the shift wasn't just in the office gossip, it was in the very fabric of global tech solutions. The deals Olivia had saved. They weren't just minor wins, they were massive. The client portfolios she had turned around were growing by the day, and soon new contracts started flooding in. Clients who had once questioned the company's competence were now singing its praises, and all thanks to Olivia. Victor, the man who had mocked her every step of the way, found himself cornered. His meetings had started to feel irrelevant in comparison to Olivia's. He had underestimated her, and now he had to watch as she took over the very ground he had walked on. His frustration was palpable every time she walked into a meeting, heads turned. Every email she sent was met with awe. His power was slipping, and Olivia's was rising. One afternoon, as Olivia walked through the office floor, the whispers grew louder. But this time they were different. They weren't about her background or her lack of qualifications. They were about her genius, her ability to make the impossible seem easy. "Did you hear she's fixing everything the board couldn't even see? She saved the Morocco deal, and now she's the one everyone turns to." And then came the biggest test of all. During a board meeting, the executives who had once ignored her, who had once relegated her to the shadows, now found themselves asking for her input. Jonathan Mallory, the CEO, leaned back in his chair, his eyes on Olivia as he nodded toward the presentation she had put together for the global expansion strategy. "Olivia," he said, his voice carrying weight, "we need to act on these proposals. You've done something here that none of us even thought possible. It's time to take this to the next level." The room fell silent, but Olivia didn't flinch. She had already conquered the hardest part. She had won their respect, and now it was time to turn that respect into power. She stood up, projecting confidence. "Thank you, Jonathan, but it's not just about what we've done. It's about what we will do." As she outlined her vision for the future of global tech, new markets, new partnerships, a truly global company, Olivia didn't just impress them. She commanded their attention. She was no longer just part of the team. She was leading it, and everyone in that room knew it. But there was one final moment that would seal her transformation. As the meeting adjourned, Jonathan Mallory pulled her aside, a look of admiration and, yes, fear in his eyes. "You've proven yourself," he said, his tone softer than usual. "I never expected this from anyone, but especially not from you." Olivia smiled a smile that was both knowing and humble. "That's the thing about expectations, Jonathan," she said calmly. "People are always looking at what's in front of them. They rarely notice what's been quietly building beneath the surface." She turned to walk away, but then paused, glancing over her shoulder. "But now they do." As she left the room, she could feel the shift. Her victory wasn't just about a promotion. It was about the complete redefinition of what was possible. The invisible woman had become the most powerful force in the room. The ripples from Olivia's rise were felt across the company. The other executives, once so sure of their dominance, now found themselves recalibrating. The underdog was now the top dog, and no one would ever forget the woman who had once been invisible, who had quietly, powerfully reshaped everything. Olivia had not only proven her worth, she had made sure that the world would never again look past her, and that more than any promotion was her true victory. Olivia's story isn't just about a promotion. It's about breaking the chains of expectation. It's about proving that potential isn't defined by your job title, your background, or even your education. It's defined by your drive, your willingness to fight for what you deserve, and your ability to show the world that you are more than the labels they place on you. When Olivia first walked into that office as a janitor, she was invisible. To the CEO, to her colleagues, to the entire company, she was just someone who cleaned up after them. But what they didn't realize was that she was quietly learning, adapting, and becoming the very thing they needed. They looked at her, and they saw a cleaner. She looked at herself, and she saw a leader. And that's the lesson, isn't it? How often do we overlook people based on their position or appearance? How many times do we assume that someone's worth is limited to the tasks they're given, when in reality, they're just waiting for the right moment to show their true value? How many Olivias are we passing by every single day? But the key takeaway is not just recognizing hidden talent. It's the courage to claim your space even when no one is ready to give it to you. Olivia didn't wait for permission. She didn't beg for recognition. She earned it, and in doing so, she redefined the rules. This is a story about resilience, self-belief, and the unwavering commitment to your own potential, no matter the odds. Olivia didn't let the world tell her who she was. She wrote her own story, and in the end, the world had no choice but to read it. The real question is, what are you waiting for? Are you ready to step out from the shadows and show the world exactly who you are? Or are you going to keep hiding behind expectations? Because just like Olivia, you have the power to change everything, if you're willing to take it. You just witnessed a story of power, of resilience, and of unseen potential rising to the top. Olivia didn't wait for permission to be great. She created the opportunity herself. And what about you? What's stopping you from taking that next step, from breaking free of the labels that others have put on you? Because let's be real, you have the power to rewrite your own story, just like Olivia did. And it's about time the world sees you for the incredible force that you are. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or invisible, this story is for you. It's time to step into the spotlight, own your worth, and never let anyone tell you what you can or cannot do. Now, here's your chance. Subscribe to stay updated on more stories that will inspire you to take action. Like and share this video if you believe the world needs to see what happens when someone finally takes control of their narrative. And leave a comment below. What's the one thing you've been waiting to step into? Don't wait for someone to hand you the opportunity. Create it. And remember, your story isn't over yet. This is just the beginning.